I now have the distinct honor to introduce today's keynote speaker, Hossein Fateh. Mr. Fateh is President, Chief Executive Officer, and a Director of Dupont Fabros Technology. He originally co-founded Dupont Fabros Development in 1997 with Lamont J. Dupont, where he managed through a variety of entities the acquisition, development, and leasing and management of company properties. Dupont Fabros Technology completed its initial public offering in the fall of 2007. Prior to his current responsibilities, Mr. Fateh served from 1990 to 1997 as Vice President of a broad-based real estate development company, where he was responsible for acquisition, development, leasing, financing, and sales. Mr. Fateh is a double alumnus of the George Washington University School of Business, earning both his bachelor's degree in business administration and a master's of science from the George Washington University. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mr. Hossein Fateh.
Thank you, Dean Kays. And thank you to all the honored guests, parents, partners attending today's ceremonies. While you may not remember some of my advice today, remember this: it's never too late to have fun skateboarding. To the graduating class of 2014, congratulations. I know what an important occasion this is for you. Well, it's important for me too. So important that, like the rest of you, I asked my mom to come. Thank you for being here, Mama. When I first got the call from GW, I thought they've discovered how many classes I've missed, and they were going to take back my diploma. Luckily, it wasn't that. It was something quite special: the invitation to speak to you today. Frankly, I had no idea I was such a celebrity. After all, UC Irvine went with our local guy, President Obama. Stanford is tag teaming Bill and Melinda Gates. When Kanye West signed up Catholic and P. Diddy said yes to Howard, I knew I was in select company. While there may be bigger celebrities and rap stars dishing out advice today, I think I do have something useful to share. 4 pieces of contrarian advice. Piece of advice number 1: take calculated risk when others are not. When I left GW in 1990, I began a life-changing apprenticeship. I walked into the office of a very independent-minded entrepreneur, nuts and bolts real estate genius. Now, I wasn't expecting a formal training program, but I also wasn't expecting this. He pointed to a chair at the end of his massive desk and said, "Sit down and shut up." And I did. For many years, I listened to his every word. You know, I had taken my first calculated risk, learning my trade at a nitty-gritty small operation instead of a more prestigious shop. With an interesting twist, this entrepreneur was in bankruptcy. What did this mean for me? It was a learning experience of a lifetime. Virtually all his business employees were gone. It was just me. And rather than feel overwhelmed, I relished the opportunity. I learned every job in the place. I wasn't just his right hand. I was the right, the left, and a few others in between. It paid off. I listened and learned about transactions. I learned how to structure an offer, the importance of due diligence, how to negotiate with lenders, and how to lease. And most importantly, I learned how to navigate the subjective world of bankruptcy and to play the game, a chess game of bankruptcy law. Years passed, and I took my next calculated risk. Reconnecting with a like-minded childhood friend as my business partner, Lamont Dupont. Together, we formed a real estate company and purchased office buildings in DC. We specialized in renovations and made the initial foray into industrial, and then the then emerging data center space. In 2000, we prided ourselves on a major lease with a $30 billion communications company. It was the year's biggest lease. 12 months later, however, we found our pride had been misplaced. And as we watched our largest tenant declare bankruptcy in the great tech bubble of 2001, to say the least, our emerging portfolio was at risk. And speaking of portfolios, let me tell you what I think about portfolio theory. I don't believe in diversification. In my main line of business studies. With apologies to Professor Jabbour and to Markowitz, diversification works for a portfolio of stocks, but not necessarily for your dreams and ambitions. Rather than, I'm a fan of what I call conviction theory. When you've done your research, when you've taken the calculated risk, when you know in your bones that it's right, go all in. I'll say more about conviction theory later, but for now, let me quote Andrew Carnegie. Carnegie summarized this approach best when he said, "A wise man puts all his eggs in one basket and then watches it carefully." My partner and I had invested virtually every dime into our real estate basket. We were so all in that my wife and I were living in a small, heavily mortgaged house with our newborn daughter, Cammie. In the middle of DC's characteristically hot summers, we were so cramped and so hot, my wife asked me if we could move into one of our data centers. At least it had decent air conditioning. But back to the tech bubble and the bankrupt tenant. Turns out our tenant wasn't the only data center operator in trouble. Panic was setting in for many data center owners and lenders across the country. So what do you do when you've gone all in on a strategy that others are abandoning out of panic and fear? We doubled down and brought more data centers. But you can't double down in exactly the same way. Something had to change. Something had to be different. And that's what brings me to my second piece of advice. Be creative in your approach to calculated risk. When I talk about creativity, it might help if I back up a bit and describe a data center. It's effectively the landlord of the internet. If not the internet per se, then certainly its products, its softwares, its databases, its apps, games, all sit within the data center. The data center provides three things: security, power, and cooling to all the servers. We knew that despite the dot-com meltdown, the internet wasn't going away. If the internet was a 12-chapter book, we were convinced that we were only on the first chapter. After all, this was 2001. We saw something different. We saw data centers as real estate, while telecom companies saw them as telecom assets. To realize our data center ambitions, we needed money. And because, like many of you, we didn't have much. The key was to get the banks to understand data centers as real estate. In those days, banks were in no mood to understand the operations of a data center. They had no desire to understand expenses associated with massive air conditioning units and the maintenance that goes into generators and UPS systems. That's where the creativity came in. We updated the 200-year-old model of a triple net lease and applied it to the data center for the first time. Our model made buildings much more valuable. It was a win for tenants, a win for owners, and a win for lenders. Banks got it, they lent us the money, and a lot of it. And a new business was born. So you see, creativity is not just for artists. It's also vital to the graduates of the specialized master's programs. So what do you need besides willingness to take calculated risk and do it creatively? You need my third piece of advice. You need conviction. And here's when I tell you what I tell my children. Cami, Sophia, Kian, think for yourself. And once you've made up your mind, stop listening to everybody else. There'll be a lot of naysayers out there. There'll be plenty of people telling you it's never been done before. You've taken the risk, you've decided it's right, you've put the creativity in place. Once you have a plan, stop listening to everybody else. Be your own person. Stick to your conviction. Then give it time. And here's when that conviction comes in handy. On the second, on the third, and fourth time that failure rears its head. Because I hate to tell you, failure is rarely a one-off deal. What matters is how you come back from it. 5 years after we thrived in the tech bubble, we pulled off a creative first. We obtained the IRS's first private letter ruling, allowing data centers to qualify for real estate investment trust status. The market liked our savvy, recognized us with the largest REIT IPO of 2007. Then came the credit crunch of 2008. In a period of 2 months, our stock lost over 85% of its value. Friends and family members who had invested with us quit speaking to me. The driver of the downward pressure on the stock was a loan we had coming due on a data center in Chicago. Given the severity of the financial crisis, neither the bank nor the market thought we could get a tenant and able to repay the loan. So we went to the bank and said, let's get creative and refinance. Do you want to take back an empty data center? Or would you rather get paid a higher interest rate for an extended term and substitute the collateral with a fully leased building in Virginia? By looking at the refi creatively, the lender came away with a stronger security, the market came away with renewed confidence in our ability to manage adverse events. We went on to become a leader in the data center space. For me, it was all about conviction. There was nothing wrong with the assets. There was nothing wrong with the internet, nor the future demand of data centers. There was a temporary disconnect with the credit markets. With conviction and creativity, I was convinced we could get past it. When it's right, you just know it. Case in point, when I met my wife, Dahlia, I knew immediately she was the one. After 40 days, I asked her to marry me. My business partner asked me, Hossein, are you sure? I told him, Lamont, I've never needed more than 45 days of due diligence for anything. So in a collection of stories, I tried to illustrate my passion for calculated risk, creativity, conviction, but at the end of the day, there is no substitute for my fourth piece of advice. That is recognizing luck and grabbing it as it walks by. There's no story that exemplifies this as much as my 50-hour showdown in Blackstone's offices in New York City. In 2004, 8 investors entered a conference room in Midtown Manhattan, vying for the assets of bankrupt Cable and Wireless, USA. Carl Icahn was there, Oak Hill, Welsh Carson, the Gores brothers, Savis, and the founders of Arcadia. They were all there. I would have brought a ticket just to see that show. We went in armed with a solid due diligence on all the real estate and a guarantee from Lehman Brothers to finance our bid up to $148 million. We had conviction. And this is how it worked out. After 2 rounds of bidding, I ran out of money. I was out. Not just out of the running, but out of $1 million of my and my partner's money we had spent just getting to that point. I was sick. I had taken calculated risk, gone all in, and lost. Then I received perhaps the most important advice of my life. A kind lawyer. Now don't laugh. Kind lawyer is not necessarily an oxymoron. Pulled me aside and said, Hossein, you've already been here 48 hours. We all already smell. Why don't we stick around and see what crumbs fall off the table? There still may be something here for you. What did I have to lose? I had spent months doing the due diligence. I had already lost $1 million. What was another night without sleep? So I continued to camp out on the conference room floor. The bidding was down to 2 investors, and they were both running out of money. One of them had a brainwave. Savis approached me and asked if we'd be willing to buy just the real estate and lease it back to them. Not the business, just the real estate. As a real estate guy, this was the deal that suited us perfectly. Talk about luck walking by. You better believe it, we grabbed it. We worked out the deal on a handwritten yellow piece of paper and went on to win the bid with Savis. Lehman kept their word and financed it for us. Savis bought the business for $148 million, and we bought the real estate for $53 million. And about a year later, we sold it for $94 million. This was truly a case of recognizing luck when all else had failed and grabbing it. Now, that's enough about me. Let's talk about you. I am so proud of you all. GW has done nothing but get more rigorous over time. Actually, I'm not sure if I could get in today. So what you've accomplished really impresses me. For those of you who've gotten A's, great job. Well done for your hard work. I still have nightmares about messing up my schedule and not doing my homework. For those of you who've not gotten A's, I have good news. It's not too late. It's irrelevant where you are today. What is relevant is where you are in 10 years. What matters is your willingness to take calculated risk, your ability to be creative in your work, the strength of your conviction, and perhaps most importantly, your good sense in grabbing luck. That work, that creativity, does not need to be destructive. A lot of people think that good ideas need to be big, bold, and change the world all at once. Nice, but not necessarily so. I believe the value of incremental improvement is often understated. Improvement compounds over time, just like money. I spent a few minutes a day thinking about a series of small improvements in the way data center leases are structured and built. For me, incremental improvement compounded a single building with a tenant in bankruptcy to a publicly traded company with $3.2 billion in assets. And as luck would have it, you are graduating at the best possible time, in the best possible place. I look at this moment in America, and I'm 100% convinced I wouldn't want to be anywhere else at any other time in history. You're going out into the world in a perfect trifecta for American business. Never have I seen such an alignment of infrastructure for success. Technology, energy, and capital. Let's talk about technology. Every year, the market is producing new businesses that drive efficiencies and improve the ways we live and work. Consider game changers like Uber and Airbnb, and payment systems like Square, and countless businesses that are derived from the trickle-down effect of these technologies. This is huge. Next, let's talk about cheap energy. New technologies are driving down the cost of energy to some of the lowest in the world. In the US, natural gas costs about $4.75 a BTU. In Singapore, it's closer to 20. And of course, from natural gas comes electricity. There will be cheap, abundant energy to fuel America, a superpower, for the next 20 to 25 years. This is truly transformational. And finally, let's talk about capital. Because of cheap energy and efficiencies in technology, I don't see inflation spiking anytime soon. This will mean the availability of cheap money to fund good ideas for a very long time. The opportunities I see in the US are unparalleled. We have the prospects of growth of an emerging market with the benefits of a stable platform. So if you don't have a green card, try and get one and stay here. Milk these opportunities, take calculated risk, live your life all in. Be creative, have conviction. I am excited for you. You're privileged to be here. Don't waste it. Get up and do it. Thank you and good luck, but don't forget to grab luck as it walks by.